The rifle shot echoed across the dusty plains of Northern California, just as Teresa Owens clutched her swollen belly and urged her exhausted mare through the canyon pass, knowing that if Marcus Davenport caught up to her this time, neither she nor her unborn child would see another sunrise. It was late August of 1882, and the sun beat down mercilessly on the hard, packed earth as Teresa's horse stumbled over loose rocks. She had been riding for 3 days straight, stopping only when absolutely necessary, her body aching and her mind racing with fear. Marcus had connections everywhere, men who owed him favors or feared his wrath. The gambling halls, the saloons, the sheriff's office in Sacramento, they all bent to his will. When she had discovered she was carrying his child 2 months ago, she had made the mistake of telling him, thinking perhaps it would soften the cruel edge that had emerged in their courtship. Instead, his eyes had gone cold, and he had told her in no uncertain terms that she would do exactly as he said, that she belonged to him now, that the child would be raised under his complete control. Teresa had seen what Marcus did to people who defied him. She had watched him ruin a merchant who refused to sell his property, spreading lies and intimidation until the man had no choice but to leave town with nothing. She had heard whispers about a woman who had tried to leave him years before, a woman who had disappeared and was never heard from again. So when Marcus had locked her in his grand house on the hill overlooking Sacramento, telling her she would stay there until the baby came and then they would discuss her future, Teresa had known she had only one choice. She had to run. The escape had been carefully planned over 2 weeks. She had befriended one of the household staff, a young woman named Claire who had her own reasons to hate Marcus. Claire had helped her steal away in the dead of night, providing a horse and what little money she could scrape together. Teresa had ridden north, avoiding the main roads, sleeping in abandoned barns and dense thickets, always listening for the sound of pursuing hoofbeats. Now, as her horse crested a ridge and began the descent into a small valley, Teresa spotted something that made her heart leap with desperate hope. Below, nestled against a hillside and surrounded by scattered ponderosa pines, sat a modest ranch. Smoke curled from the chimney of a sturdy log cabin, and she could see a barn, a corral with several horses, and what looked like a vegetable garden. It was isolated, far from any main trail, exactly the kind of place where someone might hide. Her mare stumbled again, this time nearly going to its knees. Teresa managed to keep her seat, but she knew the animal could not go much farther. She had pushed the poor creature too hard, and guilt mixed with her desperation. With no other option, she guided the horse down the slope toward the ranch, praying that whoever lived there would have mercy on a woman in her condition. As she approached, a man emerged from the barn, alerted by the sound of hooves. He was tall and lean, dressed in worn denim trousers and a faded blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned, muscular forearms. A wide-brimmed hat shadowed his face, but Teresa could see dark hair and a strong jaw. He moved with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin, and when he saw her, he immediately strode forward, his expression shifting from caution to concern. "Madam," he called out, quickening his pace as Teresa's horse came to a halt near the corral fence. "Are you all right?" Teresa tried to answer, but the world suddenly tilted. The combination of exhaustion, dehydration, and fear caught up with her all at once. She felt herself sliding from the saddle, and then strong hands caught her, steadying her against a solid chest. "Easy now," the man said, his voice low and reassuring. "I have got you." Teresa looked up into his face and found herself staring into eyes the color of aged whiskey, flecked with gold in the afternoon light. His face was weathered by sun and wind, with lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though he was not smiling now. He looked to be in his late 20s, perhaps 30, and there was a steadiness about him that made something in Teresa's chest loosen slightly. "Please," she managed to whisper. "I need help." His gaze dropped to her rounded belly, then back to her face, and she saw understanding dawn in his eyes. "Come inside," he said without hesitation. "You look about ready to collapse." He helped her toward the cabin, moving slowly to match her pace, one arm around her waist to support her. Teresa's legs felt like they might give out at any moment, but she forced herself to keep moving. When they reached the door, he pushed it open and guided her to a comfortable chair near the fireplace. "Sit here," he instructed. "I will get you some water." Teresa sank into the chair gratefully, her hands instinctively going to her belly. The baby moved beneath her palms, a flutter of movement that reassured her. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to gather her scattered thoughts. The man returned quickly with a tin cup full of cool water. Teresa took it with trembling hands and drank deeply, the liquid soothing her parched throat. When she lowered the cup, she found him watching her with those steady eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. "When did you last eat?" he asked. Teresa had to think about it. "Yesterday morning. Some jerky I had in my saddlebag." He shook his head. "That will not do. You need proper food, especially in your condition." He moved to the kitchen area, which was separated from the main room by a rough-hewn counter. "I've got stew on the stove. It is not fancy, but it is hot and filling." As he ladled stew into a bowl, Teresa took the opportunity to study her surroundings. The cabin was simple but well-maintained, with sturdy furniture and a few personal touches that suggested the man who lived here took pride in his home. There was a bookshelf against one wall, filled with worn volumes, and a photograph on the mantel of an older couple that might have been his parents. He brought her the bowl along with a spoon and a thick slice of bread. "Eat slowly," he advised. "You do not want to make yourself sick." Teresa obeyed, taking small bites even though her stomach growled with hunger. The stew was good, rich with beef and vegetables, and the warmth of it spreading through her body was almost enough to make her weep with relief. The man pulled up another chair and sat down, not too close but near enough that they could talk easily. "My name is Robert Sullivan," he said. "This is my ranch. What is yours, Teresa?" she replied, then hesitated. "Teresa Owens." "Miss Owens," he said with a slight nod. "You are running from something or someone, that much is clear." Teresa's hand tightened on the spoon. "How did you know? A woman in your condition, riding alone across rough country, looking like she has been chased by demons. It does not take much figuring." His tone was matter-of-fact rather than judgmental. "The question is, how much trouble is following you?" Teresa set down the bowl, her appetite suddenly deserting her despite her hunger. "A great deal of trouble," she admitted quietly. "The man who? The father of my child. He is powerful, wealthy, and he does not like to lose what he considers his property." Robert's expression darkened. "He considers you his property." "He considers everything his property," Teresa said bitterly. "I was foolish. I thought he cared for me, that we were courting properly. By the time I saw what he really was, it was too late. I was already carrying his child. And he wants you back. He wants control, over me, over the baby." Teresa looked down at her hands. "I heard him talking to his men before I escaped. He plans to take the child once it is born, to raise it as his heir. As for me, I am not certain what he intends, but I know it will not be freedom." Robert was silent for a long moment, his jaw working as he processed this information. Finally, he spoke, his voice firm and resolved. "He will not find you here." Teresa looked up sharply, hope and disbelief warring in her chest. "You do not understand. Marcus Davenport has resources, connections. He probably has men searching every town between here and Sacramento. This ranch is not on any map that matters, Robert said. It is 20 miles from Grass Valley, and most people do not even know it exists. I like it that way. I came out here 5 years ago because I wanted peace and solitude, and I found it. He leaned forward slightly. If you want to stay here until your child is born, until you figure out your next move, you are welcome to it. Why would you do this for a stranger? Teresa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Robert stood and walked to the window, looking out over his land. My sister was in a situation similar to yours once, he said after a moment. Different circumstances, but she was running from a man who thought he owned her. She did not make it. She died trying to escape him, fell from her horse crossing a river and drowned. He turned back to face Teresa, and she could see old pain in his eyes. That was 10 years ago. I was just 18, too young and stupid to know how to help her properly. I have lived with that regret every day since. So when I see a woman in need, especially one with a child to protect, I am not going to turn my back. Teresa felt tears prick at her eyes. I am sorry about your sister. So am I. Robert returned to his chair. But maybe I can make it mean something by helping you. You can stay in the cabin. I will sleep in the barn. It is comfortable enough, and I have done it before during the hot summer months. I could not ask you to give up your home, Teresa protested. You are not asking. I am offering. His tone left no room for argument. Tomorrow, after you have rested, we can talk more about the situation and what needs to be done. For now, you need sleep. Teresa wanted to argue further, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a physical weight. Thank you, she said again, the words feeling inadequate for the magnitude of what he was offering. Robert showed her to the bedroom, a small room with a simple bed covered in a handmade quilt. The sheets are clean, he said. There is a basin and pitcher for washing. If you need anything during the night, just call out. I will be close enough to hear. After he left, closing the door quietly behind him, Teresa sat on the edge of the bed and allowed herself to fully feel the relief of being safe, at least for the moment. She placed both hands on her belly and felt the baby move again. We are going to be all right, she whispered. I promise. She undressed down to her chemise and crawled beneath the quilt. The bed was more comfortable than anything she had slept in for days, and despite her racing thoughts, sleep claimed her within minutes. Teresa woke to the smell of coffee and bacon frying. Sunlight streamed through the window, and for a moment she was disoriented, unable to remember where she was. Then everything came rushing back, and she sat up quickly, her heart pounding. The baby protested the sudden movement with a sharp kick, and Teresa rubbed her belly soothingly. Sorry, little one, she murmured. She found her dress, wrinkled and dusty from travel, and put it on. There was a small mirror above the basin, and she grimaced at her reflection. Her dark blonde hair had come loose from its braid and hung in tangles around her face. Her green eyes had dark circles beneath them, and her skin was pale beneath the sunburn on her nose and cheeks. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman on the run. Teresa did her best to tidy herself, washing her face and hands and attempting to rebraid her hair. When she finally emerged from the bedroom, she found Robert at the stove, cooking breakfast. Good morning, he said, glancing over his shoulder. I hope you are hungry. I made extra. I am, Teresa admitted, and I feel guilty about you cooking for me. You have already done so much. I cook for myself every day anyway, Robert said. Making enough for two is no hardship. He gestured to the table. Sit down. This is almost ready. Teresa obeyed, settling into one of the chairs. A few minutes later, Robert placed a plate in front of her loaded with bacon, eggs, and fried potatoes. He poured her a cup of coffee and then fixed his own plate before joining her. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes. Teresa found herself stealing glances at Robert, trying to reconcile his kindness with the hard life of a rancher in this isolated place. He had strong hands, scarred and calloused from work, and moved with an economy of motion that spoke of efficiency and experience. "I took care of your horse," Robert said between bites. "She was in bad shape. Dehydrated, exhausted. You pushed her hard." Guilt stabbed at Teresa. "I know. I hated doing it, but I did not have a choice." "I understand," Robert assured her. "She will be fine with rest and proper care, but she should not be ridden for at least a week, maybe 2. "That is a problem," Teresa said slowly. "If Marcus's men come looking, I need to be able to leave quickly." "If they come, you can take one of my horses," Robert said. "But I still think it is unlikely they will find this place. The nearest town is Grass Valley, and I only go there once a month or so for supplies. I keep to myself, and my neighbors, few as they are, respect that." "Tell me about this area," Teresa asked. "I have never been this far north before." Robert leaned back in his chair, cradling his coffee cup. "Grass Valley is a mining town, or was. The gold rush days are mostly over, but there are still some operations running. It is quieter now than it was 10 years ago, but it is still busy enough. Lots of people coming and going, which means strangers do not stand out much." He paused. "This ranch is north of there, up in the foothills. The land is not great for farming, but there is good grazing for cattle and horses. I run about 50 head of cattle and breed horses on the side." "You do all the work yourself?" Teresa asked. "Most of it. During Roundup, I hire a couple of hands from town, but otherwise, yes. It is a lot, but I like the independence." He studied her for a moment. "What about you?" "Where are you from?" "Sacramento originally," Teresa said. "My parents died when I was 16 in a cholera outbreak. I went to work as a seamstress for a dress shop. That is where I met Marcus. He came in one day to order a dress for his mother, and he was so charming, so attentive. He courted me for months, bringing me flowers, taking me to nice restaurants. I thought I was the luckiest woman in the world." "When did things change?" "Gradually at first," Teresa said, staring into her coffee. "He would get angry if I talked to other men, even in passing. He started making decisions for me, what I should wear, where I should go. I told myself he was just protective, that it was romantic. Then one night he got into an argument with a man at a restaurant who had looked at me. Marcus broke his nose, right there in front of everyone. The man did not press charges. No one ever presses charges against Marcus." "How did you end up living in his house?" "He convinced me to quit my job, said he would take care of me. I was already in love with him, or I thought I was, so I agreed. At first it seemed wonderful. I had beautiful clothes, good food, and a comfortable place to live. But then he started keeping me there, saying it was not proper for me to be seen around town without him. When I found out I was pregnant and told him, I saw the truth in his eyes. I was not a person to him. I was just a means to an end, a way to produce an heir he could control." Robert's hands tightened around his cup. "Men like that should not be allowed to walk free." "Money and power protect men like Marcus," Teresa said bitterly. "The law serves him, not justice." They finished breakfast in silence, both lost in thought. Afterward, Robert showed Teresa around the ranch properly. The property was larger than it had seemed the previous day, with good pastureland and a creek running through the eastern edge. The cattle were healthy, and the horses in the corral were fine specimens. "You ride?" Robert asked as they leaned against the corral fence. "Not well," Teresa admitted. "I never had much opportunity to learn in the city." "After the baby comes, if you are still here, I could teach you," Robert offered. "It is a useful skill, especially out here." Teresa felt warmth spread through her chest at the casual way he said "if you are still here," as though he truly meant his offer to let her stay. "I would like that," she said softly. The days began to fall into a rhythm. Teresa insisted on helping around the ranch despite Robert's protests, doing what she could given her condition. She cooked meals, tended the vegetable garden, and even helped with some of the lighter chores. Robert was careful never to let her overexert herself, always watching with a protective eye that Teresa found both reassuring and confusing. She tried not to think too much about why a stranger would be so kind to her. In her experience, men always wanted something in return for their generosity. But Robert asked for nothing, expected nothing. He was polite and respectful, giving her space while still being attentive to her needs. At night, he went to the barn without complaint, and in the mornings he had coffee ready when she emerged from the bedroom. 2 weeks passed, and with each day, Teresa felt some of the tension in her shoulders ease. There was no sign of Marcus or his men. The work was hard but satisfying, and she found peace in the simple routine of ranch life. The baby grew active, kicking and moving constantly, and Teresa would sometimes catch Robert watching her belly with an expression she could not quite read. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the hills, Teresa finally found the courage to ask what had been on her mind. "Why are you really doing this, Robert?" He was quiet for a long moment, rocking slowly in his chair. "I told you about my sister. I know, but this is more than making up for the past. You have given up your home, your privacy, your routine. You do not even know me." Robert turned to look at her, the fading light casting shadows across his face. "When you rode up that first day, you looked like hope and desperation all mixed together. It reminded me of Rebecca, my sister. But it was more than that." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I have been alone on this ranch for 5 years. It is peaceful, and I have told myself that peace is what I want. But lately, I have been wondering if maybe I was just hiding from life. Then you showed up, and suddenly the cabin does not feel so empty. The work does not feel so endless. I wake up looking forward to the day because I know you will be there." Teresa's heart began to beat faster. "Robert, I am not expecting anything," he said quickly. "I know you have been through hell, and the last thing you need is another man complicating your life. I just wanted you to know that having you here, it has been good for me, better than I expected." Teresa did not know what to say. She had been so focused on survival, on protecting her child, that she had not allowed herself to think about her own feelings. But now, sitting in the gathering darkness with this kind, steady man beside her, she had to admit that she felt something stirring in her chest that was not just gratitude. "It has been good for me too," she said softly. "You have given me something I thought I would never have again: safety, peace, a place to breathe." They sat in comfortable silence after that, listening to the sounds of the night settling in around them. Teresa thought about Marcus, about the life she had left behind, and realized that for the first time in months she was not afraid. The next morning, Teresa woke to raised voices outside. Her heart immediately began to pound as she struggled out of bed and rushed to the window. In the yard below, she saw Robert talking to 2 men on horseback. They were rough-looking characters, dressed in dusty trail clothes, and even from this distance, Teresa could see the guns on their hips. Her blood ran cold. Had Marcus found her, she pressed herself against the wall beside the window, trying to hear what was being said without being seen. The men were asking Robert something, but she could not make out the words. Robert's responses were short, his body language relaxed but alert. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only a few minutes, the men turned their horses and rode away. Robert watched them go, his hand resting casually on the gun at his own hip, a gun Teresa had not realized he wore. When the riders were out of sight, he turned and walked back to the cabin. Teresa met him at the door, her face pale. Who were they? Drifters looking for work, Robert said, but his eyes were serious. "They asked if I had seen a woman matching your description riding through. Said they were looking for someone who had run away from family in Sacramento." Teresa's legs went weak, and she grabbed the doorframe for support. "What did you tell them?" "I told them I had not seen anyone," Robert said. "I told them this ranch is off the main trails and most travelers pass me by without knowing I am here." "Did they believe you?" "I think so. But Teresa, we need to be careful now. If they are asking around, there may be others, and they will probably check back through Grass Valley." Teresa wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the brief peace she had found shattering. "I should leave. I am putting you in danger." "No," Robert said firmly, stepping closer. "You are not going anywhere, especially not now. You are 7 months along. Riding hard across country could hurt you or the baby." "But if they come back with more men, then we will deal with it," Robert interrupted. "This is my land, my home. I decide who is welcome here and who is not." He reached out and gently touched her shoulder. "You are safe here, Teresa. I meant that. He will not find you here." Teresa looked up into his face and saw absolute determination there. Something in her chest loosened, and she felt tears start to flow. "I am so tired of being afraid." "I know," Robert said softly. He pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully, mindfully of her belly. "I know." Teresa let herself lean into his strength, let herself accept the comfort he offered. For so long she had been alone, carrying her burdens by herself. Having someone to share the weight, even for a moment, was almost overwhelming. They stood like that for several minutes before Robert gently pulled back. "Come inside. Let us have breakfast and think this through." Over coffee and eggs, they discussed their options. Robert suggested that Teresa stay inside as much as possible for the next few weeks, at least until they were certain the men had moved on. He would continue his regular routine so as not to raise suspicion if anyone else came by. In the meantime, they would prepare for different scenarios, including the possibility that they might need to move quickly. "There is an old line shack up in the hills about 5 miles from here," Robert said. "It is not much, just a one-room cabin, but it is well hidden. If trouble comes, you could go there and I could lead any searchers away." "I do not want to hide while you face danger alone," Teresa protested. "And I do not want you or your baby in the line of fire," Robert countered. "Let me do this, Teresa. Let me keep you safe." The intensity in his voice made Teresa's breath catch. She studied his face, seeing the concern there and something more, something that made her pulse quicken despite everything. "All right," she agreed quietly, "but promise me you will be careful too." "I promise." The next few days were tense. Robert rode out to check his cattle but always made sure he was back before dark. Teresa stayed close to the cabin, always listening for the sound of approaching riders. The baby seemed to sense her anxiety, moving restlessly inside her. On the 4th day after the men had come, Robert returned from checking his trapline with news. "I rode into Grass Valley today," he said. "Stopped by the general store. The owner mentioned that there had been several men in town asking questions about a pregnant woman. They were showing a photograph around. Teresa felt her stomach drop. Marcus must have given them a picture of me. The store owner said most people claimed not to have seen you," Robert continued. "But someone apparently told them about an old trapper who lives north of town, said he might have seen something. That trapper is my closest neighbor, about 10 miles east of here. Will he tell them about this ranch, old Pete? Maybe. He is not a bad man, but he likes his whiskey and money talks." Robert paced the cabin thinking, "I should go see him, feel out the situation. What if it is a trap? Then I will be ready for it." Robert checked his gun, then looked at Teresa. "If I am not back by nightfall, I want you to take the bay mare and ride to that line shack I told you about. There are supplies there enough for a few days. Wait for me there." Robert, Promise me, Teresa. She wanted to argue, but she could see it would do no good. I promise. Robert left an hour later, riding one of his faster horses. Teresa spent the afternoon trying to keep busy, but her mind would not settle. She found herself constantly going to the window, looking out at the trail, waiting for his return. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, Teresa's anxiety grew. She gathered supplies, packing saddlebags with food, water, and blankets, preparing for the possibility that she might need to run. The baby kicked hard, as if protesting the tension it felt through her body. "Hush, little one," Teresa whispered, rubbing her belly. "Your papa. I mean Robert. Robert will come back. He has to." The slip of the tongue startled her. She had not meant to think of Robert in those terms, but somehow it had happened. Somewhere in the past few weeks, he had become more than just a protector or a friend. He had become important to her in a way that both frightened and thrilled her. Just as full darkness fell, Teresa heard hoofbeats. She grabbed the rifle Robert had left for her, her hands shaking, and positioned herself by the window. But as the rider came into view, she recognized Robert's silhouette and nearly wept with relief. She rushed outside as he dismounted. What happened? Pete had not talked to anyone yet, but he confirmed that men had been asking around. They are being systematic, checking every ranch and homestead in the area. Robert took the rifle from her gently and set it aside. But I convinced Pete to send them in the wrong direction if they come to him. Told him you were my wife and that you were hiding from an abusive husband. Pete's wife left him once for similar reasons. He understood. So we have some time, a little. But Teresa, we need to think long term. Eventually, if Marcus is as determined as you say, he might find this place. We need a better plan than just hiding. They went inside, and Teresa fixed them both coffee while Robert built up the fire against the evening chill. When they were settled at the table, Robert looked at her seriously. "There is one way to make absolutely certain Marcus cannot claim any rights over you or the baby," he said. Teresa frowned. "What do you mean?" "If you were married to someone else legally, he would have no claim. The baby would be your husband's child in the eyes of the law." Teresa's eyes widened as she realized what he was suggesting. "Robert, I cannot ask you to do that. You are not asking. I am offering." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I know this is not how these things are usually done. I know we have only known each other for a few weeks. But Teresa, I care about you. More than I thought I could care about anyone. And if marrying me would keep you and your baby safe, then I want to do it." Teresa's throat tightened with emotion. "But you would be taking on someone else's child and a wife who comes with nothing but trouble." "I would be taking on a woman who is brave and strong and kind," Robert said. "A woman who makes my house feel like a home. As for the baby, any child you bring into this world would be lucky to have you as a mother, and I would be honored to be there as a father." Tears spilled down Teresa's cheeks. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you sing to the baby when you think no one is listening. I know you water my vegetable garden in the mornings because you think I do not notice it needs it. I know you have nightmares sometimes and you wake up trying not to cry. I know you are stronger than you think you are and braver than anyone I have ever met." He squeezed her hand gently. "I know I want to wake up every morning knowing you are here. That is enough for me." Teresa could not speak. She looked at this man who had given her everything without asking for anything in return, and she felt her heart crack open. "I am afraid," she whispered. "Of what?" "Of what I feel when I look at you. Of how safe you make me feel. Of how much I have started to care about you." She drew a shaky breath. "Marcus made me doubt my own judgment. How do I know this is real? How do I know I am not just trading one prison for another?" Robert pulled his hand back, giving her space. "You do not have to decide anything right now. Think about it. If you want to say no, we will find another way." But Teresa, I promise you this. If you marry me, you will never be a prisoner. You will be my partner, my equal. And if you ever want to leave, I will help you go." "You would let me leave. I would hate it," Robert admitted. "But yes. I do not want you because I own you. I want you because you choose to be here." Teresa looked at him for a long moment, seeing the truth in his eyes. Then, slowly, she stood up and walked around the table. Robert stood as well, uncertainty flickering across his face. "I do not want to leave," Teresa said softly. "I want to stay here with you. I want my baby to grow up in this place, safe and loved, and I want to see if what I feel when I look at you is real." "What do you feel?" Robert asked, barely breathing. "Like maybe I could be happy again. Like maybe I could love someone who deserves it." She reached up and touched his face, feeling the rough stubble on his jaw. "Like maybe I am already starting to." Robert closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. "Teresa." "Yes," she whispered. "I will marry you." He opened his eyes, and the joy she saw there made her heart soar. He pulled her gently into his arms, careful of her belly, and held her close. "I will spend every day trying to deserve you," he murmured into her hair. "You already do," Teresa said. They held each other in the firelight, and for the first time since she had fled Sacramento, Teresa felt something other than fear. She felt hope. The next morning, Robert rode into Grass Valley to make arrangements. There was a circuit preacher who came through once a month, but Robert did not want to wait that long. Instead, he found the local justice of the peace, a man named William Carter, and convinced him to ride out to the ranch to perform the ceremony. Judge Carter was an older man with a kind face and shrewd eyes. He listened as Robert explained the situation in vague terms, saying only that they wanted to marry quickly due to Teresa's condition and the isolated nature of the ranch. If the judge suspected there was more to the story, he kept his suspicions to himself. "I can come out tomorrow afternoon," Carter said. "You will need witnesses." "I will find some," Robert assured him. True to his word, Robert rode out to Pete's place and convinced the old trapper to serve as a witness along with Pete's son, a young man of about 20 named Daniel. Both men agreed readily, pleased to be invited to a wedding, even an impromptu one. The next afternoon, Teresa found herself standing in the main room of the cabin, wearing the best dress she had brought with her, a simple green calico that at least was clean and pressed. She had managed to put her hair up properly, and Robert had picked wildflowers from the meadow that morning, which she held in a small bouquet. Robert stood beside her in clean clothes, his dark hair still damp from washing. He looked nervous, which Teresa found endearing. Judge Carter stood before them with a worn Bible, while Pete and Daniel stood to the side as witnesses. "Dearly beloved," Carter began, and Teresa felt the weight of the moment settle over her. The ceremony was simple and quick. Teresa heard herself making vows, promising to love and honor Robert Sullivan, and heard Robert making the same promises to her. When Carter asked if anyone objected to the union, there was only silence. And when he pronounced them man and wife, Robert leaned down and kissed her gently, his lips warm and soft against hers. It was not her first kiss, but it felt like it. It felt like a promise, like a new beginning. Pete and Daniel congratulated them heartily, and Robert brought out a bottle of good whiskey he had been saving. The men toasted the new couple, and Pete told a few jokes that made everyone laugh. Then, as the afternoon wore into evening, the guests departed, leaving Robert and Teresa alone. They stood in the cabin, suddenly awkward with each other. They were married now, husband and wife, but they were still essentially strangers in many ways. "I will still sleep in the barn," Robert said quietly. "I do not expect. I know this marriage was for practical reasons. I do not want you to feel pressured." Teresa felt a rush of affection for him. Even now he was thinking of her comfort above his own. "Robert, we are married, properly married. You do not have to sleep in the barn." "But your condition, I am pregnant, not fragile," Teresa said gently. "And I would like my husband to sleep in his own bed." She paused, feeling her cheeks heat. "With me." Robert looked at her for a long moment, and she saw desire and uncertainty war in his expression. "Are you sure?" "I am sure that I trust you," Teresa said. "And I am sure that I want to try to make this marriage real in every way, but we can take things slowly. We have time." Robert crossed the room and took her hands. "I have never wanted anything more than I want you right now," he said honestly. "But I can wait. I will wait as long as you need." Teresa squeezed his hands. "Maybe we start with just sharing the bed tonight, sleeping beside each other, see how it feels." "I would like that," Robert said softly. That night they lay together in the darkness, fully clothed with a respectful distance between them. Teresa listened to Robert breathing, felt the warmth of his body near hers, and felt safe in a way she had not known was possible. Somewhere in the night, she reached out and took his hand, and he held it gently until they both fell asleep. The days that followed were a careful dance of learning each other. Robert was patient and gentle, never pushing, always giving Teresa space to set the pace. They worked together during the day, ate meals together, and spent evenings talking by the fire. Robert told her stories about growing up on a farm in Missouri, about his parents who had died of fever when he was young, about his sister Rebecca, and the guilt he still carried. Teresa shared her own stories, about her childhood in Sacramento, about her parents and how much she missed them, about her dreams of having a real family of her own. Slowly, the physical distance between them closed. Teresa began to lean against Robert when they sat together. He would put his arm around her shoulders, and she would rest her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. When they went to bed at night, they would curl up together, Robert spooning behind Teresa with his hand resting protectively on her belly. One night, about 2 weeks after their wedding, Teresa turned in Robert's arms and kissed him. It was not a chaste kiss like the one they had shared at their wedding. This was a kiss of passion and need, of wanting and hope. Robert responded immediately, his arms tightening around her, his lips moving against hers with a hunger that made her whole body come alive. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Robert rested his forehead against hers. "Teresa, I want this to be real," she whispered. "I want you to be my husband in every way. I want to give myself to you completely." "Are you sure? The baby is fine. I am fine, and I need this, Robert. I need to feel alive again. I need to feel loved." "You are loved," Robert said fiercely. "God, Teresa, you are so loved." He kissed her again, and this time he did not hold back. His hands moved over her body with reverent care, and Teresa responded with equal passion. They made love slowly, carefully, with Robert always mindful of her condition but Teresa urging him on, needing the connection, the intimacy, the proof that she was truly his and he was truly hers. Afterward, they lay tangled together, both stunned by the intensity of what had passed between them. Robert traced patterns on Teresa's bare shoulder, and she ran her fingers through his hair. "I love you," Robert said suddenly. "I know it is fast and maybe it is crazy, but I love you, Teresa. I think I started falling in love with you the moment you rode up to my ranch looking like a fierce, frightened angel." Teresa felt tears spring to her eyes, but they were happy tears this time. "I love you too," she said. "I did not think I could ever love anyone again after Marcus, but you showed me what real love looks like. You gave me back my heart." They kissed again, and made love once more, this time with even greater urgency and passion. When they finally fell asleep in the early hours of morning, Teresa felt complete in a way she never had before. The weeks passed, and Teresa's belly grew larger. She moved more slowly now, tiring easily, but she was healthy and the baby was active. Robert doted on her, never letting her lift anything heavy, always making sure she rested enough. He would talk to the baby through her belly, telling it stories and singing it silly songs that made Teresa laugh. They had almost forgotten about the threat of Marcus Davenport when, on a cool October morning, trouble came calling. Teresa was inside making bread when she heard riders approaching. Through the window, she saw 4 men on horseback, and her blood ran cold when she recognized the man in the lead. It was Samuel Beck, Marcus's most trusted enforcer, a cold-eyed man known for his ruthlessness. Robert was in the barn. Teresa wanted to run to warn him, but she knew she would never make it in time without being seen. Instead, she quickly removed her apron and moved to the door, placing herself in the doorway where she could be seen clearly from the yard. Beck and his men reined in their horses when they saw her. Beck's eyes widened slightly in recognition before narrowing dangerously. "Miss Owens," he said. "Or should I say, Mrs. Davenport? My name is Mrs. Sullivan," Teresa said, proud that her voice did not shake. "And you are trespassing on my husband's property." "Your husband?" Beck looked amused. "Marcus said you might try something like this, a false marriage to escape your obligations." "There is nothing false about it." Robert's voice rang out as he emerged from the barn, his rifle held casually but ready. "My wife and I were married 3 weeks ago by Judge Carter in Grass Valley. It is all legal and proper." Beck studied Robert, assessing him. "Marcus Davenport wants his woman and his child. He has sent us to bring them back." "Mrs. Sullivan is not going anywhere," Robert said calmly. "She is my wife, carrying my child as far as the law is concerned. Marcus Davenport has no claim here." "That baby is his blood," Beck snarled. "That baby is my husband's child," Teresa called out. "Legally and in every way that matters. If Marcus claims otherwise, he will be admitting to compromising an unmarried woman's virtue, which I doubt will please his high society friends in Sacramento." Beck's face reddened with anger. He clearly had not expected this level of resistance. "Marcus will not accept this." "Marcus does not have a choice," Robert said. His voice was still calm, but there was steel beneath it. "Now I am going to ask you once politely to leave my property. If you refuse, I will defend my home and my wife." One of Beck's men moved his hand toward his gun. Instantly, Robert shifted his aim, the rifle now pointing directly at the man. "I would not do that if I were you." The tension in the yard was thick enough to cut. Teresa held her breath, her hands instinctively going to her belly. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, surprisingly, Beck laughed, though it was not a pleasant sound. "You are either very brave or very stupid, Sullivan. Either way, this is not over. Marcus will have lawyers, judges, people who owe him favors. He will make your life hell." "Let him try," Robert said. "But if you or anyone else comes on my land again without invitation, you will leave in a pine box. That is a promise." Beck stared at Robert for another long moment, then jerked his head at his men. "Let's go. Marcus needs to hear about this." They turned their horses and rode away. Robert did not lower his rifle until they were out of sight. Then he set it down carefully and strode to Teresa, pulling her into his arms. "Are you all right?" he asked urgently, checking her over. "I am fine," Teresa said, though she was shaking. "Robert, what if he comes back with more men? What if Marcus really does use the law against us?" "Then we will fight him," Robert said. "Teresa, you are my wife. That baby is going to be my child. I will protect you both with everything I have." Teresa buried her face in his chest, breathing in his familiar scent, letting his strength steady her. "I am sorry I brought this trouble to you." "You brought light to my life," Robert corrected. "Everything else is just details." They spent the next few days in a state of heightened alert. Robert made sure his guns were always loaded and ready. He taught Teresa how to shoot properly, setting up targets behind the barn and coaching her until she could hit them consistently. Teresa felt clumsy with her pregnancy belly in the way, but she practiced diligently, knowing that her child's safety might depend on it. A week after Beck's visit, Robert rode into Grass Valley to send a telegram to a lawyer friend in San Francisco, explaining the situation and asking for advice. The lawyer, a man named Jonathan Hayes, telegraphed back that as long as the marriage was legal and consummated, Marcus would have a difficult time claiming any parental rights, especially if he had to admit to the circumstances of the child's conception. However, Hayes warned, men like Marcus Davenport did not always play by the rules. Robert should be prepared for anything. The advice was not comforting, but at least it confirmed that they had done the right thing with the marriage. Robert returned home with supplies and news. "I stopped by the sheriff's office as well," he told Teresa. "Filed a complaint about Beck and his men trespassing and making threats. The sheriff said he would look into it, though I am not sure how much good it will do if Marcus has influence in Grass Valley too." "At least it is on record," Teresa said. "If something happens, there will be documentation." "Nothing is going to happen," Robert said firmly. "I will make sure of it." But 2 days later, something did happen. Teresa woke in the middle of the night to a sharp pain in her belly. At first she thought the baby was just kicking hard, but then the pain came again, more intense, and she gasped. Robert was awake instantly. "What is wrong?" "I do not know. It hurts." Teresa tried to sit up, and another wave of pain washed over her. When she looked down, she saw wetness on the sheets. "Robert, I think the baby is coming." Robert went pale in the moonlight streaming through the window. "But it is too early. You still have 2 months." "Tell that to the baby," Teresa said through gritted teeth as another contraction hit. Robert sprang into action. He lit lamps, stoked the fire, and put water on to boil. "I need to get the doctor from Grass Valley." "There is no time," Teresa said. "Even if you rode straight there, it would take hours to get him back here." "Then what do I do?" Robert asked, and she could hear the fear in his voice. "You help me," Teresa said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. We can do this." But as the hours wore on and the contractions grew stronger and closer together, Teresa began to have doubts. The pain was worse than anything she had imagined, and she was terrified that something was wrong. The baby was not supposed to come yet. Would it even survive being born so early? Robert stayed by her side through it all, holding her hand, wiping her forehead with cool cloths, murmuring encouragement. "You are doing so well," he said. "You are so strong, Teresa. I am in awe of you." "I am scared," Teresa admitted between contractions. "I know, so am I. But we are going to get through this together." Robert kissed her forehead. "You and me and our baby, we are a family, our baby." The words gave Teresa strength. This was their child now, hers and Robert's, no matter the circumstances of its conception. This baby would be born into love, not control. That was worth fighting for. As dawn broke, painting the sky pink and gold, Teresa felt the overwhelming urge to push. Robert positioned himself to help, his hands steady despite his own fear, and Teresa bore down with all her strength. "I can see the head," Robert exclaimed. "Just a little more, Teresa. You can do this." Teresa pushed again and again until finally, with a rush and a cry, the baby slipped free into Robert's waiting hands. He caught the tiny, squirming infant, his eyes wide with wonder and shock. "It is a boy," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Teresa, we have a son." But the baby was not crying. Robert's wonder turned to panic as he looked at the still, silent infant. "What do I do?" Teresa's medical knowledge was limited, but she remembered something her mother had told her once. Rub his back, stimulate him, help him breathe. Robert obeyed, rubbing the baby's tiny back vigorously. For several terrifying seconds, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, the baby gasped, coughed, and let out a thin, reedy wail. The sound was the most beautiful thing Teresa had ever heard. She began to cry, relief and joy mixing together. "Bring him to me." Robert carefully carried the baby to Teresa, placing him on her chest. The infant was tiny, smaller than he should have been, but his eyes were open and his little hands grasped at the air. Teresa wrapped him in the blanket Robert handed her and held him close, marveling at the perfect little life they had created. "He is beautiful," Robert said, sitting on the edge of the bed, his hand gently touching the baby's downy head. "He is so small." "He is early, but he is strong," Teresa said. "Listen to those lungs." The baby was indeed crying lustily now, and Teresa instinctively knew what he needed. She adjusted her clothing and helped him latch on to nurse. The sensation was strange but also natural, and after a few moments, the baby settled into feeding contentedly. Robert watched them with such love and wonder on his face that Teresa felt her heart might burst. "We did it," she whispered. "You did it," Robert corrected. "You were amazing." They spent the rest of the morning in a haze of exhaustion and happiness. Robert cleaned up and made sure Teresa was comfortable, then sat with her and their son, unable to stop staring at the tiny miracle they now held. "What should we name him?" Robert asked. Teresa thought about it. She had considered various names during her pregnancy, but none had felt quite right. Now, looking at this baby who had fought so hard to enter the world, who represented hope and new beginnings, she knew exactly what to call him. "Thomas," she said. "Thomas Robert Sullivan." Robert's eyes filled with tears. "You want to give him my name? You are his father," Teresa said simply. "In every way that matters, you are his father. I want him to carry your name with pride." Robert leaned down and kissed her, gentle and sweet. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything. For trusting me, for loving me, for giving me a family." "Thank you for saving us," Teresa replied, "for giving us a home and a life worth living." They sat together, the three of them, as the morning sun filled the cabin with golden light. Thomas slept peacefully in his mother's arms, unaware of the complex circumstances of his birth, knowing only that he was warm and safe and loved. Over the next few weeks, Teresa slowly recovered her strength while Robert took on all the household duties in addition to his ranch work. He was constantly checking on Teresa and Thomas, making sure they had everything they needed. The baby was small but seemed healthy, nursing well and gaining weight steadily. One afternoon, when Thomas was 3 weeks old, Judge Carter came calling. Robert greeted him warily, but the judge quickly held up his hands in a peaceable gesture. "I am not here to cause trouble," Carter said. "I am here to offer help." Over coffee in the cabin, with Teresa listening from the bedroom where she was nursing Thomas, Carter explained. "I received a visit from a lawyer representing Marcus Davenport. He was asking questions about your marriage, trying to find grounds to have it annulled or declared invalid." Teresa's blood ran cold. "What did you tell him?" "I told him the truth. That I performed a legal marriage ceremony between Robert Sullivan and Teresa Owens, that it was done properly with witnesses, and that I have the signed certificate to prove it." Carter smiled slightly. "I also told him that I had visited you this week, and that Mrs. Sullivan was recovering nicely from the birth of her son, and that you seemed like a very happy family." "Did he believe you?" Robert asked. "It does not matter if he believed me. It is the truth, and it is documented. Marcus Davenport can hire all the lawyers he wants, but he cannot change facts." Carter leaned forward. "However, I want to warn you, men like Davenport do not give up easily. He may try other tactics." "Let him try," Robert said. "We are ready." Carter nodded approvingly. I also wanted to bring you this. He pulled out an envelope from his coat. It is a birth certificate for Thomas Robert Sullivan, dated with his actual birth date and listing you, Robert, as the father. File this with the county records, and it becomes another official document supporting your claim. Teresa came out of the bedroom, carrying Thomas, who was now awake and looking around with curious dark eyes. Thank you, Judge Carter. You did not have to do all this. Yes, I did, Carter said, standing to tip his hat to her. I have been a judge for 25 years. I have seen a lot of injustice in that time, and I have seen too many powerful men abuse their positions. When I can strike a blow against that kind of tyranny, I do. He gently touched Thomas's tiny hand. Besides, every child deserves to be raised in love, not as some rich man's pawn. After Carter left, Robert held Teresa and Thomas close. We have good people on our side, he said. We are going to be all right. Teresa wanted to believe him, and most of the time she did. Life on the ranch settled into a new routine. Thomas was a good baby, crying only when he was hungry or needed changing. He had dark hair like Robert and green eyes like Teresa, and both parents were completely besotted with him. Robert proved to be a natural father. He would walk the floor with Thomas in the middle of the night when the baby was fussy, singing soft lullabies in his deep voice. He fashioned a wooden cradle with his own hands, carving little horses into the headboard. He would sit for hours just watching Thomas sleep, an expression of pure wonder on his face. I never thought I would have this, he told Teresa one evening as they sat together, Thomas asleep in his cradle between them. A wife, a child, a real family. I thought I would spend my life alone on this ranch. And now, Teresa asked, now I cannot imagine life any other way. Robert reached over and took her hand. You and Thomas, you are everything to me. Winter came early that year, with the first snow falling in late November. Robert worked hard to ensure they had enough wood for the fireplace, and that the barn was weatherproofed for the animals. The ranch became isolated, cut off from town by snow-choked roads, but Teresa did not mind. She felt safe in their cozy cabin, with her husband and son, watching the snow fall outside the windows. Christmas came, and Robert surprised Teresa by producing gifts he had made secretly over the past weeks. For Thomas, he had carved a set of wooden animals, smooth and perfect for little hands to hold. For Teresa, he had made a beautiful cedar chest with her initials carved on the lid. For your hope chest, he said when she opened it. I know you came here with nothing, but we will fill this together with things that matter. Memories, treasures, the story of our family. Teresa cried and kissed him, overwhelmed by his thoughtfulness. She gave him a shirt she had sewn from fabric she had found in the cabin, working on it during Thomas's nap times. It was not perfect, her stitching still amateur, but Robert wore it proudly, saying it was the finest shirt he had ever owned. They spent Christmas Day in front of the fire, playing with Thomas, who was now alert and responsive, cooing and smiling at his parents. Robert read aloud from one of his books, a collection of poems, and Teresa felt a peace and contentment that she had never known was possible. But in the new year, as the snow began to melt and the roads became passable again, trouble returned. Robert had ridden into Grass Valley for supplies, leaving Teresa and Thomas at home. She was not worried, as Robert had made the trip many times safely. But when he returned in the late afternoon, his face was grim. What happened? Teresa asked immediately. I ran into Beck in town, Robert said. He was not alone. He had 6 men with him, all armed. They made it clear that Marcus has not given up. He is offering a significant reward for information about us, and he is spreading rumors that you kidnapped his child. Teresa felt sick. Kidnapped? But Thomas was not even born when I left. Marcus is claiming you were pregnant with his child and that you stole away in the night to deprive him of his heir. Robert's jaw was tight with anger. He is making you out to be a villain, painting himself as a wronged father. Does anyone believe him? Some do, especially those who do not know us. Others are skeptical. But Teresa, if Marcus keeps pushing this, he could force the law to get involved. They might come to investigate to verify our story. Then they will see the truth, Teresa said, though her voice wavered. We have documents, witnesses. We have not done anything wrong. I know, but powerful men can twist the truth. Robert pulled her into his arms. I am not going to let him take you or Thomas, I promise. Over the next few weeks, they heard more reports from town. Marcus had indeed hired lawyers and was making noise about filing charges. He was also apparently telling everyone who would listen that Teresa had been his fiancée, that they had been planning to marry, that she had betrayed him in the worst possible way. It was all lies, but as Robert had warned, some people believed them. Teresa became afraid to go into town with Robert, worried that she would be recognized, that someone would try to take Thomas from her. Then, in early March, the situation came to a head. A federal marshal showed up at the ranch, accompanied by Judge Carter and 2 deputies. Robert met them in the yard, his hand on his gun, while Teresa watched anxiously from the cabin with Thomas in her arms. Mr. Sullivan, the marshal said, his voice carefully neutral. My name is Marshal Daniel Brooks. I have been asked to investigate allegations made by Marcus Davenport regarding your wife and child. What allegations? Robert demanded. That your wife, Teresa Sullivan, is actually Teresa Owens, formerly engaged to Mr. Davenport. That she was pregnant with Mr. Davenport's child when she fled Sacramento, and that the child she is now raising was fathered by Mr. Davenport, not by you. Those allegations are lies, Robert said flatly. Perhaps, but I am obligated to investigate. Brooks looked past Robert to where Teresa stood in the doorway. I would like to speak with Mrs. Sullivan, if I may. Judge Carter stepped forward. Marshal, I can vouch for the Sullivans. I performed their marriage ceremony myself last October. Everything was legal and above board. I do not doubt your word, Judge, but I still need to speak with the lady. Teresa took a deep breath and stepped outside, holding Thomas close. I am Teresa Sullivan, she said clearly. What do you want to know? Brooks removed his hat. Madam, I need you to tell me your history with Marcus Davenport. So Teresa did. She told the marshal everything from how she had met Marcus, to how their relationship had changed, to how she had discovered she was pregnant and realized she needed to escape. She explained how Marcus had locked her in his house, how he had threatened her, how Claire had helped her run. I rode for 3 days until I found this ranch, she said. Robert took me in when I had nowhere else to go. He protected me and offered to marry me so that Marcus could not claim any rights to my child. We were married legally and properly. Thomas is Robert's son in every way that matters. Brooks listened carefully, taking notes. When Teresa finished, he asked, Do you have any proof of what you say? Letters, witnesses who can corroborate your story. Claire, the woman who helped me escape, she would testify, Teresa said. And there are others in Sacramento who saw how Marcus treated me, who whispered about his reputation. Finding these people and getting them to testify against a man like Davenport would be difficult, Brooks said. He has influence and money. So you are saying he wins because he is rich, Robert said angrily. I am saying that this is a complicated situation. Brooks looked at Thomas, sleeping peacefully in Teresa's arms. However, I can see with my own eyes that this child is well cared for, that you are both devoted parents, and Judge Carter's testimony carries weight. So what happens now? Teresa asked. I will file my report. I will note that I found no evidence of wrongdoing on your part, that your marriage appears to be legitimate, and that the child is thriving in your care." Brooks put his hat back on. "Mr. Davenport can pursue this further if he wishes, but without concrete proof, I doubt any judge will side with him, especially against Judge Carter's documentation. It was not a complete victory, but it was something." After the marshal left, promising to be in touch if there were further developments, Teresa felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. "Is it over?" she asked Robert. "Maybe not completely, but we have won this round," Robert said. He kissed her forehead. "Marcus is learning that we are not going to be pushed around." Spring arrived, and with it came a blessed silence on the Marcus Davenport front. Weeks passed without any news or trouble. Robert began to hope that perhaps the man had finally given up, that he had realized Teresa was beyond his reach. The ranch came alive with new growth. Teresa planted a larger garden with Robert's help, and they talked about expanding their cattle operation. Thomas grew rapidly, becoming more alert and interactive each day. He would laugh at funny faces and reach for his parents with grasping fingers. On a warm April evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Teresa leaned against Robert's shoulder and said, "I am happy. For the first time in years, I am truly, deeply happy." "So am I," Robert said. He kissed the top of her head. "You and Thomas, you are the best things that ever happened to me. Even with all the trouble I brought, especially with the trouble," Robert said with a smile. "It means I got to be your hero," Teresa laughed. "My hero, I like the sound of that." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling down for the night. Then Robert said, "Teresa, I have been thinking. If Marcus has truly given up, maybe we should think about making our lives even fuller." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Thomas needs siblings. I would love to have more children with you, children who are ours from the very beginning." He turned to look at her, his expression hopeful. "What do you think?" Teresa felt warmth spread through her chest. "I think I would love nothing more than to have your children, to build a family with you." "Yeah," Robert's face lit up. "Yeah," Teresa confirmed. She kissed him softly. "Let us fill this ranch with life and love and laughter." Robert pulled her close, and they kissed more deeply, the passion between them as strong as ever. Later that night, they made love with the windows open, letting the spring breeze cool their heated skin, and Teresa felt complete in a way that had nothing to do with running or hiding, and everything to do with choosing to build a life with the man she loved. Summer arrived, and with it came a letter that changed everything. It was delivered by a rider from Grass Valley, and it was from Claire, the woman who had helped Teresa escape. Teresa's hands shook as she opened it. Claire wrote that Marcus Davenport was dead. He had been killed in a gambling dispute in San Francisco, shot by a man who claimed Marcus had cheated him. The man had been arrested, but the general consensus was that Marcus had gotten what was coming to him. His estate was in chaos, his business dealings revealed to be largely fraudulent, his reputation in ruins. Teresa read the letter twice, unable to believe it. Marcus was dead. The threat that had hung over her for nearly a year was simply gone. "Robert," she called, and he came running from the barn, alarmed by the tone of her voice. "What is wrong?" "Nothing. Everything. Marcus is dead." She handed him the letter with trembling hands. Robert read it quickly, his expression cycling through shock, relief, and finally joy. "He is really gone. He is really gone," Teresa repeated, and then she started to laugh. It was not entirely a happy sound, more like a release of tension that had been building for months. She laughed until tears streamed down her face, and Robert held her, laughing with her, both of them giddy with the sudden, unexpected freedom. When they finally calmed down, Robert cupped Teresa's face in his hands. "You are truly safe now. You and Thomas. There is no more threat, no more shadow hanging over us. We can really build our life together, Teresa said, without fear. Without fear, Robert agreed. Just love and hope and all the tomorrows we want. They celebrated that night with a special dinner and a rare bottle of wine Robert had been saving. They toasted to the future, to their family, and to the incredible twist of fate that had brought them together. Thomas, now sitting up on his own and babbling enthusiastically, seemed to sense the festive atmosphere and was particularly delightful, making both his parents laugh with his antics. As the seasons turned, the Sullivan family flourished. Teresa's garden produced abundantly, and Robert's cattle operation expanded. They hired a hand, a young man from town who was grateful for the work and proved to be reliable and hardworking. In the fall, Teresa discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was different. There was no fear, no running, just joy and anticipation. Robert was beside himself with excitement, already planning a bigger house to accommodate their growing family. "We need more rooms," he said one evening, sketching plans on paper. "One for Thomas, one for the new baby, and maybe room for more after that." "More," Teresa teased. "How many children are you planning on, Mr. Sullivan?" "As many as you will give me," Robert said, his eyes twinkling. "I want a house full. I want noise and chaos and so much love we do not know what to do with it all." "That sounds perfect," Teresa said softly. The new baby, a daughter they named Sarah Rose Sullivan, was born the following spring in the newly expanded house. The birth was easier than Thomas's, with a doctor from Grass Valley in attendance this time. Sarah had her father's dark hair and her mother's delicate features, and Thomas, now a toddler, was fascinated by his tiny sister. Robert was an even more devoted father the second time around, if that was possible. He would walk the floor with Sarah when she cried at night, even though Teresa had insisted he needed his sleep for the ranch work. "This is more important than sleep," he would say, cradling his daughter against his chest. "She is only going to be this small once." Life continued its steady rhythm. The ranch prospered. Thomas grew into a bright, curious boy who loved helping his father with the horses. Sarah proved to be a happy, easy baby who smiled at everyone. Teresa and Robert's love deepened with each passing year, maturing from the passionate urgency of new love into something richer and more enduring. 2 years after Sarah's birth, Teresa gave birth to twin boys, James and Matthew Sullivan. The arrival of twins was a shock but a welcome one, and suddenly the house Robert had built seemed almost too small again. But they made it work, with love and laughter and a fair amount of chaos. Robert proved to be remarkably patient with 4 young children. He would come in from a long day of work and immediately be surrounded by small bodies clamoring for his attention. He never seemed to mind, always having time for a story or a game or simply holding whichever child needed comfort. Teresa sometimes watched her family and marveled at how far she had come. From the terrified, pregnant woman fleeing for her life to this, a confident mother and wife, secure in the knowledge that she was loved and valued. The scars from her time with Marcus had faded, replaced by the daily joys and challenges of family life. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Robert surprised Teresa with a gift. It was a locket on a delicate gold chain, and inside was a tiny photograph of their family, all 6 of them, taken by a traveling photographer who had passed through Grass Valley. "So you always carry us with you," Robert said as he fastened it around her neck. Teresa touched the locket, feeling the weight of it against her skin. "I love it. I love you. I love you too. More than words can say." Robert pulled her into his arms. Thank you for giving me this life, Teresa. Thank you for trusting me that first day when you rode up to my ranch. Thank you for taking a chance on a lonely cowboy. Thank you for seeing me, Teresa replied, for seeing past the fear and the desperation to who I really was. Thank you for giving me and Thomas a home and a future. They kissed, long and sweet, the kiss of two people who had weathered storms together and come out stronger on the other side. That night, after the children were all tucked into bed, Teresa and Robert sat on their porch as they had so many times before, watching the stars come out over the California hills. "You ever think about what might have happened if you had not found this place?" Robert asked quietly. "Sometimes," Teresa admitted, "but I try not to dwell on it. The what-ifs do not matter. What matters is what did happen. I found you and you saved me and we built this beautiful life together." "We saved each other," Robert corrected. "I was just existing before you came. You gave me purpose, a reason to want more than just solitude." Teresa leaned her head on his shoulder. "We have a good life, don't we? The best life," Robert agreed. "And it is only going to get better." He was right. The years continued to bring joy and growth. Thomas grew into a fine young man who shared his father's love of ranching and his mother's compassionate heart. Sarah became a bright, spirited girl who kept everyone on their toes with her curiosity and determination. The twins, though mischievous, were good-hearted boys who idolized their older brother and doted on their sister. The ranch prospered under Robert's careful management and Teresa's practical wisdom. They became respected members of the community in Grass Valley, known for their integrity and generosity. When neighbors faced hardship, the Sullivans were always ready to help. When celebrations came, their home was always open. Teresa never heard from Marcus Davenport's family or associates again. It was as if that entire chapter of her life had been erased, replaced by something infinitely better. Sometimes she would think about Claire, the woman who had helped her escape, and wonder what had become of her. She hoped Claire had found her own happiness, her own freedom. On quiet evenings, when the children were playing and Robert was working nearby, Teresa would sit and reflect on her journey. She thought about the desperate woman she had been, riding through the wilderness with terror dogging her heels. She thought about the moment Robert had caught her as she fell from her horse, the steadiness in his eyes that had given her the first glimmer of hope she had felt in months. She thought about their wedding and Thomas's birth, and all the moments big and small that had woven together to create their family. And she thought about love, real love, the kind that did not seek to control or possess, but to nurture and support. The kind of love that grew stronger through trials rather than weaker. The kind of love that Robert had shown her from the very beginning and continued to show her every single day. 10 years after that fateful day when Teresa had ridden onto the Sullivan Ranch, the family gathered for a special celebration. Thomas was now 12, Sarah 9, and the twins 7. They had been joined by a fifth child, another daughter named Emily, who was now 3 and the apple of everyone's eye. The celebration was for Robert and Teresa's 10th wedding anniversary, and the entire community of neighbors and friends had come out to mark the occasion. There was food and music and dancing, and as the sun set over the hills, Robert pulled Teresa into his arms for a dance. 10 years, he murmured as they swayed to the music. Best 10 years of my life. Mine too, Teresa said. Though there were moments at the beginning when I wondered if we would survive. We did more than survive. We thrived. Robert spun her gently and she laughed. And we are going to keep thriving for the next 10 years and the 10 after that, and all the years we are blessed to have together. Promise? Teresa asked, looking up into his eyes, still warm and steady and full of love. Promise, Robert said. You and me, Teresa, always. They kissed as the music swelled around them, surrounded by their children and friends, standing on the land that had become their sanctuary and their home. The past was behind them, buried and gone. The future stretched ahead, full of possibility and promise. And in that moment, held in her husband's arms, with her children's laughter ringing in her ears and peace in her heart, Teresa Sullivan knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. She had been broken and afraid, but she had been remade through love. She had run from a man who saw her as property, and she had found a man who saw her as a partner, as an equal, as the love of his life. The story of the pregnant woman hiding from the father and the cowboy who said he would not find her there had a happy ending after all. Not because the danger simply disappeared, though it eventually did, but because two people chose love over fear, partnership over possession, and built something beautiful from the ashes of trauma. As the stars came out over the California hills, and the celebration continued around them, Robert and Teresa held each other close, grateful for every twist of fate that had brought them together, and hopeful for all the years still to come. Their love story, born in desperation and sealed in courage, would continue for the rest of their lives, a testament to the power of choosing hope when everything seems hopeless, of choosing love when you have every reason to be afraid. And they lived, truly lived, happily ever after.